So recently I went out for a walk at Wolf Lake Park. It's become one of my go-to places when I need to breathe a little bit or think or pray. And on this particular day, I made the mistake of listening to a podcast about a modern contentious issue that everybody seems to have a very strong opinion about. I'm not going to tell you the topic because I don't want you or anybody else heading down a mental rabbit trail while I'm preaching this sermon. But suffice it to say, before I knew it, I was all wound up. I was tense. I was consternated. I was walking faster than I meant to. It's one of those moments where your heart races and your mind is 10 miles ahead of where your feet are. And then all of a sudden, I stopped. I caught myself thinking, what am I doing? I didn't come out here to get pulled into the noise of the world. I came out here to slow down. I came out here to go deeper spiritually. I came out here to breathe, to be well. And so I stopped the podcast on my phone and I opened up a different app and turned on some music. The music I chose was soft, drifting flute music, just a single wandering melody. And the change within me was immediate. My breathing slowed, my shoulders relaxed, my attention shifted from the debate in my AirPods to the world that was right out there in front of me. And it struck me how often our lives are filled with noise that if we were a little more self-conscious, we wouldn't choose to have. And how with one mindful moment, we can turn the volume down and we can let something better in. And honestly, that's part of what Christ the King Sunday is about. It's not imagining Christ in a distant throne far away, but remembering that there is a throne above the noise, a reign of peace and presence, a kind of leadership that steadies us rather than shakes us. People today aren't just busy, they are carrying around a lot on their shoulders. Tense from the background hum of worry that's moving through our community, worrying about the pace of life, especially for young families who feel like they're sprinting from one commitment to the next commitment, worrying about our country and how unsettled things feel, how uncertain we feel, how shaky we feel. And worry close to home, too. When we drive by an idled plant on the outskirts of town or drive around the main street, and what we see makes us wonder about the future of the community that we love. It's not one big crisis. It's a dozen small concerns that never seem to let up in our world. And Christ the King Sunday says, if the kingdoms of this world shake, there is one whose reign does not shake. And into all of that speaks the psalmist today, be still and know that I am God. Now, it doesn't say be silent. It doesn't say pretend that everything is fine when it's not. But it does say be still. Turn your attention toward God. Let yourself become aware again. That was my Wolf Lake moment. Now, a little while later, I sat down on a bench by the water. And as the flute music continued to play, I felt this deep awareness settling in. The grass was moving in the breeze, and the water was, waves were drifting across the lake toward the cluster of muskrat dens that were in the far corner. In that moment, everything felt alive. It felt present. It felt held by God. And the noise inside me quieted. And I thought, this is what I came out here for. After I enjoyed that view for a little while, I got up and I kept walking. And the other thing I noticed was the starkness of the landscape as everything prepares for winter. There's the browning grass, the bare branches, the quieting of life. And I realized something. When I see nature headed toward winter, I don't feel despair. I don't say, well, this is the end. I know what's coming. Because I know what's coming. A resurgence of life, a spring, a resurrection. What I'm seeing now, what we're all seeing now in the world around us, is a hunkering down, a settling in, a stillness, a conserving of energy, awaiting just the right conditions. One of the things that we pastors worry about especially, and I know you do too, is the state of the church these days. And when we look at the church as a whole, especially in rural areas, it seems to me that for sure I, as a pastor, sometimes forget that. I see the signs of winter in the church, and for some reason I just assume it's the end. But winter is not death. Winter is preparation. And Christ the King is Lord of the seasons, not just the springtime growth, which is fun and wondrous to see, but also of the winter stillness too. Christ reigns in what feels alive and also in what feels uncertain in us. Christ's kingship is not about dominance, it's about a steady presence, faithfulness, a quiet kind of authority that holds us all together. Jeremiah gives us this image of a righteous branch, this new shoot out of an old stump. Something that looked dead sends up unexpected life, and that's how God works. Colossians tells us that Christ is the one who holds all things together. We don't have to hold all things together. Our strategies don't have to hold all things together. Our worry doesn't have to hold all things together. Christ holds all things together. Christ holds this congregation together. Christ holds your life. Christ holds the future of Wyndham. Because the King that we follow doesn't rule by force. Christ rules by faithfulness, by the strength of mercy, and by the power of love. And then we come to Luke's gospel this morning, the bleakest winter imaginable. Jesus is hanging on the cross between two criminals. And if you want a picture of Christ the King, this is it. That's the image. Christ the King, not with a crown of thorns, or a crown of gold, but with a crown of thorns. Christ the King, not seated on a throne, but lifted on a cross. Christ the King, not surrounded by nobility, but by two condemned men. And one of them reaches out with the simplest of prayers, one we would do well to pray ourselves. Jesus, remember me. And Jesus, even in agony, answers only as a true king could. Today you will be with me in paradise. It's a moment that looked like total darkness, but Jesus speaks spring. Jesus speaks life. Jesus speaks resurrection. So maybe the invitation today is this: turn down the noise, find a place for awareness, let Christ hold you together. Trust that winter is not the end. Because the King we worship today is not the King of panic and noise. Christ is the King who brings life out of dying places. Christ is the King who whispers hope into worried hearts. Christ is the King whose power is love, whose reign is mercy, and whose kingdom has no end. And Christ is the King who says, even in your hardest season, you will be with me. I am here. And spring is coming. Thanks be to God. Amen.